part of the sleight of hand was, oh, it's not about economic power, it's about oppression and oppressed and oppressor on a broader sense, and that's where we got the transformation into identity politics, which is just the Marxist oppressor-oppressed doctrine under a new guise. And I think it's really tremendously reprehensible for people to be conducting themselves intellectually in a manner that insists that the most important element of any student, or any person for that matter, is whatever racial, gender, and sex identity happens to be flavor of the month. And I think the problem with that fundamentally is, first of all, that those category systems are extraordinarily loose and they're indefinitely multipliable, you know, because if you take any given individual, there's probably, well, it's the postmodern problem. There we go. It's the postmodern problem, that there's almost an infinite number of ways to categorize any given individual. So how the hell do you figure out which group they belong to? And that's actually a major problem. Like if you're 1/8 black, what does that make you exactly? Are you black? Are you white? Are you oppressed? Are you oppressor? Are you let's see, 1/2 as oppressed as someone who's a 1/4 black? Does it work out arithmetically that way? Hey, I'm dead serious about this, man. If we're going to play this sort of game, that's exactly the question that has to be asked, right? And then how do you multiply up your oppressed identities? And then again, who gets to decide exactly which identity you should manifest? And then how do we rank order those identities? And then how do we equate between them? And what measurement techniques do we use to determine who's oppressed and who isn't? And how do we assess equality? And on what dimensions are we going to assess equality? And who's going to enforce it? And who's going to make the decisions? It's like, oh well, we'll figure that out as we go along. It's like, yeah, we certainly will, and the results won't be pretty, I can tell you that, because the problem is actually unsolvable. All it'll mean is that those categories will be made at the whim of the people who are making the categories. And since, as we know, the only thing they believe in power is power, that the only thing they believe in is power, is that you can be absolutely sure that they will have absolutely no hesitancy whatsoever to use power in the seeking of their aims. And I think the other reason that all of the postmodernists, neo-Marxists ever do is talk about power is because they want to justify their use of power to get exactly what they want when they want it. There's nothing but power. It's like, all right, if there's nothing but power, that means we're at war over power. And that, if that's the claim that you make, then you can justify the use of power because there isn't anything else to turn to. There's no logic, there's no dialogue, there's no consensus, there's no discussion between well-meaning people. There's nothing but divisions between power groups and identity groups and a Hobbesian state of war between all of us. Well, when I look at people aiming at that, then my proclivity as a psychoanalyst is to think that that's exactly what they want. And to divide us up all by race and ethnicity and sexual identity and sexual preference and sexual expression and gender identity and all these multiplying forces of group identity seems to be nothing but an invitation to chaos, and that's exactly what I see looming. And it needs to come to a stop, and it needs to come to a stop as fast as possible. And one way of doing that is to stop the universities from continuing to indoctrinate young people who really, at least at the beginning, don't know any better, into playing these absolutely insane and I would say bordering on murderous intellectual games. And so